The rain wasn't falling down, it was coming sideways. They call it an atmospheric river here in Seattle. But that night, it felt like an ocean trying to drown me. I stood outside the heavy iron gate of my family's estate, shivering in just a thin hoodie. Through the glowing window, I saw them. My mother, Patricia, was pouring tea for my sister, Tiffany. They looked warm. They looked comfortable. And here, I was locked out in the storm, the cold sinking into my bones, a numbing ache that had nothing to do with the weather. My jaw trembled, teeth clicking together like dice in a cup. My hands felt like they didn't belong to me, numb, useless, but still gripping my phone like it was the only lifeline I had. In that moment, it wasn't just the rain or the cold, it was the isolation. The realization that I was outside, forgotten, while my family sat inside, untouched by the storm. And then my phone died. 12%. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just dialed my father. I had to know what he would find. What would he see on my sister's iPad that would change everything 20 minutes? That was all it took to go from sitting at the dinner table to standing in a hypothermic nightmare. I was in the kitchen setting the table for dinner. The scent of roasted garlic and rosemary filled the room. Warm, familiar, comforting. The kind of evening where you could almost forget the world outside. It was supposed to be a peaceful night like any other, but everything changed with a scream. Tiffany came running down the stairs, her face a perfect mask of devastation. Her eyes were wide with panic, her hands clutching her phone like it was the only thing keeping her grounded. She didn't even say hello. She just screamed, "My money's gone, $12,500 stolen." Her voice was sharp, raw with emotion. And before I could say anything, she was pointing at me. Her manicured finger jabbed in my direction, accusing me. She said I must have used her Face ID while she was napping. The words hit me like a slap, even though she wasn't touching me. I didn't even get a chance to deny it. I didn't get to ask for proof. It didn't matter. I could see it in her eyes. The accusation was already there, hanging between us like a heavy fog. And standing behind her in the living room was my mother, Patricia. Her expression was set stone cold and unforgiving. She didn't even look at the phone. She didn't check the bank app. She just looked at me, and in that glance, I saw everything I feared. The disgust was immediate. It was absolute. And it was familiar. My mother's eyes were filled with something far worse than anger. It was something deeper. A disappointment so complete that I could feel it like a weight pressing down on my chest. I'd always been the problem, the one who didn't measure up. And Tiffany, she was perfect. The golden child, the one everyone adored, the one who could do no wrong. My mother didn't even hesitate. She crossed the room in 2 long strides, her face twisted with anger. The slap came faster than I could react, louder than the thunder that rumbled outside. It wasn't the kind of slap meant to teach a lesson or correct behavior. It was a slap of pure hatred, a slap that told me everything I needed to know. She grabbed my arm, her nails digging into my skin, and dragged me to the door. The force of it shocked me, but I didn't resist. I had learned long ago that it was easier to give in than to fight, easier to disappear than to fight for a place in this family. And then, just like that, I was out in the dark, shoved into the cold night like a piece of trash that had been forgotten. The heavy iron gate slammed shut behind me, the sound echoing in my ears, sealing me out. There was no question in her mind. I was guilty. She had already decided, and there was no coming back from that. I stood there, my heart hammering in my chest, my breath fogging in the frigid air. I should have been screaming, begging for her to let me back inside. Any normal teenager would have been. They would have pressed the intercom, pleading with their mother, apologizing for things they didn't even do, just to feel the warmth of the house again. But I didn't. I stayed silent. The cold wasn't just outside, it was inside too. I had learned over the years that the worst kind of cruelty wasn't the kind you could see. It wasn't the physical pain. It was the emotional kind, the kind that you couldn't escape, the kind that turned your own family against you. And that's when I realized something. My mother wasn't trying to teach me a lesson. She wasn't misguided. She was enjoying this. She wanted to see me break. She wanted me to fall to my knees begging for mercy. She wanted to feel benevolent when she finally let me back in. And for the first time, I saw it clearly. This wasn't about a mistake. It wasn't about me being a bad daughter. This was about control. She had spent years making me the villain so Tiffany could be the victim. She had spent 15 years molding me into someone she could push aside while Tiffany shined in the spotlight. But that night, in the freezing cold, I made a decision. I wasn't going to be her villain anymore. I wasn't going to play my part in her little power fantasy. I wiped the water from my eyes and stopped looking at the window. I wasn't waiting for her to open the door. I wasn't waiting for her to let me back in. I was waiting for my father. And when I saw the headlights in the distance, I knew something was about to change. Standing there in the pouring rain, something shifted inside me. The cold seeped deep into my bones, but it wasn't the weather that made me feel frozen. It was the realization that I had been playing a part in this sick, twisted game for far too long. I had always thought that if I could just be good enough, just be loved enough, maybe then my mother would see me. But in that moment, I understood the truth. There was no enough. I was never going to be enough for her. I wasn't just locked out of the house. I was locked out of her world. The world where Tiffany was the golden child, the one who could do no wrong, the one who everyone rallied behind. And me, I was a scapegoat. The one who was always wrong, always at fault, always the problem. It wasn't about money or face ID or stolen inheritance. It was about something deeper, something far more sinister. I had been made to feel invisible, irrelevant, like I was nothing more than a tool for my mother's twisted narrative. I realized standing there in the freezing rain that I had been gaslighting myself into believing I was the problem. I had spent years trying to prove myself, trying to fix things that were never meant to be fixed. I had been so desperate for her approval, for her love, that I never saw how toxic this dynamic had become. My mother didn't just want control. She wanted power over me. She wanted to break me down, to make me small so she could feel big. But standing there shivering in the cold, I knew something had changed inside me. I wasn't going to play her game anymore. I wasn't going to beg for her approval. I wasn't going to apologize for things I didn't do, just to make her feel better about herself. The fear that had kept me trapped all these years, it vanished. It was replaced by something stronger, something colder. A quiet rage, a quiet determination. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel like a victim. I didn't feel sorry for myself. I felt angry. I felt like I had been robbed of something precious, my childhood, my self-worth, my dignity. But I wasn't going to let her take any more from me. The realization hit me like a slap. My mother didn't just want to punish me. She wanted to crush me. She wanted to destroy me so that Tiffany could shine, so that she could feel justified in her actions. But I wasn't going to let that happen anymore. I wasn't going to be her villain. I wasn't going to be the pawn in her power play. I was done playing the part, and that in itself felt like freedom. The rain didn't feel so cold anymore. It felt like a cleansing, a new beginning. I wasn't waiting for her to let me back in. I wasn't waiting for her to offer an apology or to recognize the pain she had caused. I was waiting for something else entirely. I was waiting for my father. And I knew deep down that when he showed up, everything was going to change. The headlights cut through the downpour, sharp and bright, slicing through the darkness. For a second, I thought I imagined them just a trick of the rain, the blur of water and cold. But then they grew clearer, and I knew I wasn't waiting for my mother to finally take pity on me. I wasn't waiting for an apology or a kind word. I wasn't even waiting for her to open the gate. I was waiting for my father. And when his SUV swerved into view, roaring through the storm, I felt something I hadn't allowed myself to feel in years. Hope. Hope that someone, at least one person, would choose me. My father's SUV didn't slow down as it approached the estate. He didn't care about the gate. He didn't need to punch in the code, didn't need the remote frequency. He could have, but he didn't. Instead, he saw his daughter standing in the freezing rain, watched as the iron bars kept me locked out, and he made a choice. The tires squealed a deep growl from the engine as it swerved hard to the right, tearing through the perfectly manicured lawn. He didn't care about the flower beds, about the damage to the pristine landscaping Patricia had spent thousands maintaining. The sound of the vehicle tearing across the sod was a sickening, satisfying crunch, a sharp contrast to the soft murmur of the rain. And then, the moment I'll never forget. He didn't stop until the bumper of the SUV was mere inches from the front porch steps. He could have parked outside and waited for the gate to open. He could have walked up calmly, but he didn't. His decision was immediate, decisive. He didn't hesitate. The engine roared one last time as the vehicle came to a halt. Before the sound of it dying down even reached my ears, he was out of the car. There was no rush in his movement, no frantic energy. He wasn't running. He was stalking with a kind of cold intensity I'd never seen before. The man who stood before me now wasn't the father I remembered from my childhood, the one who would pat my head and offer comfort. No, this man was a force, a father who wasn't going to let anyone hurt his child. The cold, wet air hit me again, but the moment he pulled off his heavy coat and wrapped it around me, the warmth was almost too much to handle. It was like stepping out of the storm and into the light. It was so simple, just a coat. But in that instant, I felt safe. I felt seen. I wasn't abandoned, not anymore. He didn't speak at first. He didn't need to. His presence, his actions said everything. He didn't ask me what happened. He didn't need to. There was no need for explanations or excuses. He saw everything he needed to see. And when his eyes shifted to the house, the locked door, the place where his daughter had been discarded, something inside him changed. His voice was low, calm. There was no anger, no shouting, but there was a steel in it, an authority that none of us could ignore. "Stay behind me," he said. And it wasn't a request. It wasn't a suggestion. It was a command, a father protecting his daughter. And with that, he walked toward the house, unbothered by the storm, unbothered by anything but the goal. He wasn't about to beg for entry. He wasn't about to plead with Patricia to let him inside. He wasn't asking for permission. He just walked up the steps and kicked the door. Not gently, not with hesitation, but with force. The solid mahogany door, meant to withstand intruders, splintered with a loud crack that echoed through the storm. It was as if the sound of the door breaking was a declaration, a statement of intent. Patricia wasn't going to control the situation anymore. She wasn't going to lock her daughter out of the house and get away with it. The door swung open, bouncing off the interior wall, and in that moment, everything changed. We weren't on opposite sides anymore. He wasn't just my father anymore. He was the man who was ready to tear down the walls to fight for me, to make sure I never had to stand outside in the cold again. When he stepped over the threshold, he didn't just cross into the house. He crossed into a new chapter. He wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Patricia, make me feel small again. As he stepped inside, I felt a weight lift off my chest. It wasn't over. Not yet. But for the first time, I felt like someone was finally on my side. Someone was finally standing up for me. And that in itself was enough to start the storm inside me to settle. The moment my father stepped inside, the air changed. The tension in the room thickened like a storm ready to burst. My mother was standing there, still holding her teacup, but now it was just a prop. She was no longer the woman who had been pretending everything was fine. She was a woman cornered, a woman whose perfect little world was crumbling around her. My father didn't say a word at first. He didn't need to. He didn't yell or scream, didn't waste any time with accusations. He just walked straight past my mother, his wet boots, leaving dark streaks on the clean Persian rug, and stopped in front of Tiffany. She was curled up on the sofa, her iPad clutched tightly to her chest like a shield. The tears were still fresh on her face, but they weren't the kind of tears that inspired sympathy. No, these were the tears of someone who had been caught, someone who knew there was no escaping the truth anymore. "Give it to me," my father said. His voice calm, but there was a weight behind it. Tiffany hesitated, her fingers gripping the iPad even tighter, but then, like she had no choice, she held it out to him. He didn't wait. He reached down and grabbed it from her, ripping it out of her hands, like she was a child caught with a stolen toy. My mother stepped forward, her voice shrill and panicked. "Give it back to her, Robert," she shouted, but my father didn't even acknowledge her. His focus was on the screen in front of him, on the damning evidence that he was about to expose. He didn't even glance at my mother. He didn't need to. The truth was all that mattered now. He opened the Venmo app, and there it was, clear as day. $12,500 sent to a company called Lux Life Resale. The transaction was right at the top, no mistake about it. My mother's face drained of color. She opened her mouth, but no words came out. She blinked, mouth opening and closing like she was trying to find an excuse, a justification, anything. "That proves nothing," she finally stammered, her voice desperate. "Sierra could have done that. She could have taken the iPad and made the transfer." My father didn't even flinch. He didn't argue. He just swiped through the phone, opening the email app. And there it was, an email from Chanel. The subject line said, "Your order has shipped," and the tracking number was live. The delivery address wasn't my room. It wasn't a locker. It was Tiffany's address, her best friend's house just a couple of streets over. "Did Sierra order a $5,000 handbag to your friend's house, Tiffany?" My father's voice cut through the room like a blade, each word more chilling than the last. Tiffany's face went pale, her breath catching in her throat. She tried to shake her head, but the tears weren't the same now. They weren't the innocent, well-practiced tears she had used for so many years. No, these were the tears of someone trapped, someone who knew she had nowhere to hide anymore. She sobbed, her voice trembling. "I needed it," she cried. "Everyone has one. You don't understand the pressure." My father didn't say a word. He just swiped again, opening her messages. The group chat at the top was active, the last message sent just 5 minutes ago. It was right while I was standing outside in the rain freezing while my mother had been inside pouring tea. Tiffany's words lit up the giant screen for everyone to see. OMG, you guys, it actually worked. The loser is literally freezing outside the gate right now. Mom is totally buying it. She's pouring me tea. I'm a genius. Bye-bye, Sierra. And attached to the message was a photo. A blurry shot of me standing outside the window, shivering in the storm. My whole world had just cracked wide open. The golden child narrative had shattered and the pieces were lying there sharp and broken. My father stared at the screen, his expression darkening with each word he read. His eyes flicked from the message to my mother and he didn't need to say a word. The silence in the room was deafening heavy, like the weight of 1,000 broken promises. Then finally he whispered, "You said you were protecting the family, Patricia. Look at that screen. Look at what you were protecting." My mother's face contorted with shock, but she didn't speak. She couldn't. She knew. She knew that everything she had tried to hide, everything she had built around her perfect image was gone. The lies were laid bare for everyone to see. And then my father's voice dropped even lower, and for the first time, I heard the real hurt in his words. She didn't just steal from her, she found her future and destroyed it. Tiffany froze. The truth was out. It wasn't just the money, it was everything. My mother couldn't protect her anymore, and now there was no way out. The room fell silent at the weight of my father's words, hanging in the air like a cloud that finally burst. My mother had no defense left, no more excuses. She stood there, her face pale, her mouth agape, but nothing came out. It was over. The house, the control, the lies, it all came crashing down in that moment. My father didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His quiet, unwavering presence was enough to end it all. Without another word, he called the sheriff, a document in hand. The house was held in trust, and Patricia had violated that trust by locking me out in the storm. The ruling was swift. 10 minutes to leave. I watched a mix of relief and disbelief swirling in my chest as my mother and sister were escorted out into the rain, no longer protected, no longer powerful. As the door closed behind them, the atmosphere in the house shifted. For the first time, it felt quiet, safe, and finally like my own. Later that night, my father made hot cocoa like he used to when I was little. The comfort was simple, but it was the first real comfort I'd felt in years. The scholarship was reinstated. I accepted it knowing I would leave. I would be free. My future was mine again. I wasn't the villain. I wasn't the victim. I was finally in control of my own life.